We have finally learned the fate of the lawyer who cited fake cases from ChatGPT in an official court filing. These are the three things that you need to know. So firstly, let's go over the basics of what happened here. You might remember this story. This happened a couple years ago in the very early days of ChatGPT, and an attorney by the name of Thomas Geyer basically used ChatGPT to help him write a legal brief in a case that had to do with a wrongful termination, and filed that brief with the court. And it cited a bunch of different cases to back up his argument. Well, turns out the problem is that those cases were not correct. Some of them, I believe, did not exist, or at least they weren't relevant. And the reason was that, again, he used ChatGPT to help write this brief, and it hallucinated cases that weren't relevant or weren't even real. Now, the second thing you need to know is that this, what would have happened here? What was the stakes? Basically, this was a huge problem for this lawyer, unsurprisingly, and there was a risk that he would be sanctioned by the court, could face some really substantial consequences there, and could even be disbarred and not allowed to practice for an error of that size. But third thing you need to know, what happened here? The judge in this case, looking at this, basically said he's not going to sanction the attorney. And there were some interesting reasons why. Basically, he just said that the attorney, Thomas Geyer, did a good job of owning the mistake, saying, yep, I used ChatGPT, it hallucinated. I should have checked this better. This was 100% my fault, and being, in his words, quote, incredibly remorseful for doing something that's that foolhardy. And I think the more interesting piece of this, though, is that the judge said basically this is kind of the cost of using generative AI, and that this is just something that happens when you're using generative AI. One of the downfalls of it was his exact words. And so he's not going to punish the attorney for basically doing something that a lot of us have probably done by accident, using AI and ending up with bad results. And I think that's the most interesting piece of this overall, is that it kind of points towards a bigger trend of people realizing that generative AI isn't perfect, and that as we use this more at a societal level, especially to solve hard problems like legal ones or even medical ones, that it's not going to be perfect. Just like people, it's going to make mistakes, there's going to be accidents, and some negative things are going to happen. And the judge seemed to take all that into account and say, I'm not going to make a situation where lawyers are afraid to use generative AI for anything, because it could be a very valuable tool in the legal space and in other spaces too. So I don't want to basically create a self-censorship. I'm going to let this guy off the hook and just acknowledge that, hey, we all have to be careful when we're using generative AI, more careful than this lawyer was in this case. But it's not something where you have to stop using it necessarily. And that's very interesting. It means, we just have to manage risk as a society with these tools. We don't have to be afraid of every single mistake that they might make. Now, the lawyer's not quite out of the woods yet. The Bar Association in the state where he practices is still reviewing this, but most likely the decision of a federal judge on the case will sway them, hopefully, in the direction of also being relatively lenient. It's a very interesting story, but I think it points to a future where we all might make mistakes with generative AI. We all need to be checking the output, but there's a societal recognition that these tools are valuable, and we still need to use them even if they're not perfect. If you found this helpful in any way, or you want to hear more news about what's happening in the AI space, please do like the video and subscribe to my channel.